What is going on, Jeromes? It's a beautiful Saturday. Birds are chirping and stuff, and it's time for 5 Good Vikings Questions, our little Q&A segment. So first up, Hoy Taya, do you have a draft crush that could be the Ivan Pace of 2024? A guy that might slip out of the draft, but you'd love to have on your rooster for next year. Now, a guy who is probably going to get drafted. I think that he'll be like a firm day 3 selection, maybe even a high day 3 selection, is Brennan Jackson, the defensive end from Washington State. Now, we talked about him a bunch already, and he's a mainstay of the late rounds of our mock drafts, but he's 6'4", wanting some more, 264, and he would fit in perfectly with that 4-tech, 5-tech spot. And, team captain, heart and hustle dude, multi-year starter in Pullman, last year 26 tackles, 8.5 sacks, a forced fumble, and immediately he would upgrade the run defense at that 4 or 5 tech spot. He's very good at absorbing blockers, keeping your linebackers clean, keeping edge rushers clean, as well as he can be a plus pass rusher as well. So I think that he's a guy that basically he would be what the Vikings wanted Asezi Atamuo to be, but Jackson, there's not a ton of buzz around him. Like maybe after the combine, if he does well, measures it in well and does well in the Underwear Olympics, we can talk about that. But also Omar Speights from LSU, the linebacker. There's just something about him, man. I like him. I really do like him a lot. I think he may go UDFA. Next up, number 2, Viking Jeff. Out of all the offseason and draft scenarios you have done, do you have a favorite you would like the Vikings to do? Well, I'm sort of whatever what happens with Kirk at this point, because I know that if Kirk is back, it's likely going to be on the Vikings' terms, and it's likely going to be a lower AAV, as well as probably not heavy guarantees in year 2, year 3. So I'm perfectly fine with that. And if they go for quarterback in the future, they'll likely make an aggressive move off the draft board to make sure that they get their guy. So I'm perfectly fine with that. But I'm in love with the idea of completely overhauling the offensive line. Basically, only Darisaw is the only one that is safe, and completely revamping things and getting back to more of a power gap offensive line. Dudes are 330, 335. And yes, the Vikings for a number of years have gone the more undersized, outside zone skill set, basically since the Kubiai came in, but I'm sort of sick of it, sort of over it. And it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, having a stout-ass offensive line that can run the ball and impose will is going to go great with whoever the hell is under center. So I'm loving that idea, man. Next up, how would you feel about Chris Jenkins Jr. in round 2? I love him. I love Chris Jenkins the second, man, because he has the NFL bloodlines, which is great. That means that he grew up around the life, like he knows how to be a pro's pro. He's been inside those locker rooms, so that's actually a huge advantage. And I understand the whole thing about his kid played, so blah blah blah, but and nepotism and that whole thing, but. There are distinct advantages for being the prodigy of progeny. The kid of a former NFL player. And it's not just because they're generally from means and resources then, but also because they have the mentality, like they know what it takes to be a pro's pro. And that's a huge advantage. That's a huge inside track. And also, if the dad can relay all that coaching that he got throughout his career, and maybe he becomes a coach himself, that's huge, where you're getting round-the-clock information as opposed to just practices and games. It's big. But Chris Jenkins, all right, so his pops was a great defensive tackle for the Jets back in the day, specifically nose tackle, just absorbing bodies. And his son, KJ2, like he's a really good hybrid in terms of stopping the run, in terms of getting after it as a pass rusher as well. Didn't put up eye-popping stats, but every single play he was doing something impactful, and for good reason. He was second-team All-American, heart and hustle. He's 6'3", 305, 2.5 sacks, 20 pressures last year, 82.7 PFF grade, and also very good against the run. And it goes beyond just wearing the number 94. I do see him as a more souped-up Diesel Dalvin Tomlinson, who, of course, we know as a Vikings free agent coming from the Giants, but he was also a second-round pick out of Alabama back in the day. Also, the thing I loved about Jenkins is that he saved his best ball for the biggest games. The Ohio State game when Michigan finally broke through, as well as the Iowa game, blanking them. Then, of course, Alabama and Washington. So, I mean, Chris Jenkins second. Like, honestly, if he snuck into the back end of the first round, it wouldn't shock me. And I think that he is going to be a hell of a pro for, a decade plus. And is it the sexiest pick in the world? No. I mean, in terms of a defensive lineman, you're always looking for guys who get stats and all that stuff. But Chris Jenkins going to come in, going to be a leader, going to be good against the run, and just be a man along that defensive line for a number of years. And I wouldn't have any issue at all taking him in the second round. He's fantastic, man. Next up, Dom All Day. Is there any chance at all that one of these top quarterbacks could tank their own draft stock intentionally at the combine and their respective pro days? If I was Williams, May, or Daniels, almost there on McCarthy, and could sway my draft stock from Chicago and wash into the Vikings or Falcons, I would do that in a heartbeat. Now, we got a picture of Chris Jones on there. Now, Chris Jones obviously not a quarterback, but in terms of tanking their draft stock at the combine, I don't know, tripping, falling, and having your junk fall out. I mean, that could be a way where. When that happened, I was really scared for Chris Jones, who was fantastic coming out of Mississippi State, because I would be worried about turf burn, if you know what I mean. But in terms of tanking your draft stock, I don't see them intentionally doing poorly in the drills. Like I don't see that. I don't see that at all. These guys are competitive, and I think that if they showed up and half-assed it, that would be so detrimental for how the league and fans think about them forever that it's not even worth it. Basically, if they want to tank their draft stock, I mean, I would, if I'm an NFL prospect, I would just come out and say, I'm not going to your team. Pulling an Eli Manning, John Elway, or refusing to interview with any teams you don't want, or refusing to visit any team you don't want. And it's sort of like what happened. Well, this happens in the NBA draft a lot, where the NBA, it's a different machine than the NFL draft. The players and agents do have a ton more power in the NBA, even in the draft, versus the NFL. And so basically, when Kobe was in the draft, rest in power, his agent was just like, "We are not working out for you. We do not." So the year he was drafted, 13 by the Hornets, and then they had a deal in place with the Lakers that sent Vlade and I believe some more draft picks to Charlotte. And then the Lakers got Kobe, the same offseason that they signed Shaq. Oh, fun fact. Did you know Magic Johnson had a comeback the year before Kobe and Shaq got to the Lakers? So if Magic hadn't been so exhausted by being surrounded by petulant children like Cedric Ceballos and Nick Van Exel, it could have been Magic, Kobe, and Shaq on the same team. How wild would that have been? Anyways, well, because you think of Magic Johnson, you think of Indiana State back in '79. You don't think modern day Kobe. Doesn't matter. But so basically, Kobe was like, hey, Philly had the 1 pick, and they took Iverson, obviously. 2 was Toronto. 3 was Vancouver. 4 was whatever. Basically, Kobe's like, I'm not working out for you guys. I refuse to show up to your place. And basically, that's the same thing that happened with Steph Curry, where Steph Curry basically just refused to work out for the Wolves. I know that the Timberwolves always get a lot of flack because they took 2 point guards ahead of Steph Curry, Rubio and Johnny Flynn from Syracuse. But Curry wasn't coming to Minnesota. He just flat out refused. Now, long story longer, bringing us back to the NFL, I think that's the bottom line. The quarterback can just say, I'm not working out for you. I'm not going to go to you if you draft me. You're going to have to trade me. And that's really about it. But in terms of just playing bad at their pro day or combine, nah, these guys are too alpha to do that. Lastly, so speaking of NBA, David Villa Numero 7. As the football season winds down, what sport would you argue is the true number 2 sport in America? I don't know, election politics? Nah. On an NFL offseason? Could be one. But basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, curling. I feel like curling is rising up. I feel like soccer is starting to get a footing. And it's really all about tapping into the youth market, because they grow up to be fans and they remember, hey, watching Premier League mornings on NBC and Peacock, or well, USA and Peacock, watching Rebecca Lowe and Tim Howard introduce like Man City versus Man United, the derby. All right, but also Liverpool. Liverpool is playing 2 preseason friendlies in the States, one in Philly. I'm not going to Philly. And a second one in South Carolina, playing at the Gamecock Stadium. I'm going to that one. It's going to be great. But I do think soccer eventually could work its way in. Who knows? I feel like lacrosse is kind of who knows? I will die on the hill that I feel like if Rugby Sevens was properly marketed, it would be great because it combines speed, agility, athleticism, and also violence, and which is, let's be honest, that's a big part of why the NFL is popular. Sylvie, get your butt out of the frame. Come on, bro. Come on. Meow. Oh, meow. But baseball, it's unfortunate to say because I do like baseball, but baseball's dying. And just the whole thing with the baseball uniforms, the fact that you can't just turn on your TV and find the ball game anymore. You have to go through 17 different streaming channels. Basketball, I want basketball to succeed, but the numbers are what the numbers are, right? And NBA numbers are down. And I do feel like the NBA, it's obviously a star-driven league. And I think that the young crop of new superstars coming up, like Anthony Edwards, like SGA, etc., I do think that they have a footing. And also, I think that NIL, name, image, likeness money, it's hurting college football, but I think it could save college basketball. Because I was a huge college basketball nerd back in the day. Like North Carolina come on and raise up Duke, all those great teams. When the Gophers went to the Final Four, it was vacated due to academics. Okay, yeah, sure. But the problem with college basketball is that fans, like every single year, the team is different with all of the one and dones, with the transfer portal and everything. And back in the day, you could see a McDonald's All-American, sign up with like Duke or North Carolina. They come in as a 6th, 7th man, but you see that they got the talent. They're going to overtake the senior once Raymond frickin' Felton goes to the league or Ed Cota goes to the league, right, man? And you follow their progression, right? 2, 3 seasons. Well, it was 3 back in the day, 3 or 4 seasons, and then they go to the NBA, and it's awesome, right? And that was the whole thing because college basketball had some semblance of continuity, but the one and dones completely. I think that they should still allow jumping straight from high school, because using a college as a farce, even though yes, the college used the player too, it's a two-way street, but it did sort of ruin college basketball. But long story longer, with the NIL money, because one of the reasons why players were declaring after 1 year is because they needed the money. I mean, families got bills, and some players come from a less than stellar background, and having that NBA money, it's great. But it diluted both college basketball with all the one and dones. Fans couldn't keep up with who was on what team, 1 year players, and it turned into AAU ball versus structured, beautiful basketball. And also it hurt the NBA because they had all these draft picks coming in who weren't ready to play in the league. Like, they weren't schooled in NBA fundamentals. They didn't have an NBA body. They were still kids. And basically they just used a rookie contract to get in, and then once they're ready to actually be something serviceable in the league, they were gone, right? So it was just, it's not a good system. But with NIL, players can be incentivized to stay and properly get paid to a degree and stay in college, and they could stay there for 3-4 years. And it's going to make college basketball better because now you got players that actually develop, who can actually become team players as opposed to just playing AAU ball. And then those players go into the league, they're a more polished product. So I actually do think that NIL hurting college football, but I think it will greatly help college basketball. But anyways, that's it. But it's Saturday. I can talk about whatever the hell I want. Anyways, you guys are the best. You know what to do. Skull, no production value.